This assignment is going to take all the things that we've done and kind of put them together in a hopefully a fairly practical way. This is a personal budget for conceivably for a high school student. You should have this file available to you. Hopefully you've got it open in front of you, but we need to first start by I guess making a few adjustments. Hopefully you've been able to figure a lot of these out. If you haven't done a few of these steps along the way, now is a good time to do them. First of all, this your name personal budget, obviously you want to change it to your name, so I'm going to change it to Tim because that's my name. But I also want really to combine, so I want to merge these cells together so it's really just all in one cell. So we go to that merge and center. Actually don't want it centered, so I'm going to click that merge and center because it merges them quickly, but then I'm also going to go back and adjust my justification back to the left. I'm going to do the same thing for the date. Merge those. I'm going to put it back to the left, and then just to make things look a little bit nicer, I'm going to put a little background color in. Didn't know if you knew this. There's more than one way, of course. We can change our cell styles this way, but when I do that, it also changes the font size, and really all I want to do is change that background color. So I'm going to use a blue, and then for the date I'm going to use another blue, probably just a little bit lighter. Next thing I notice here is that I only have the month of April labeled here. Well, the cool thing about Excel is, just like our formulas, we can click on that bottom corner and drag it over, and notice that it will fill in the months. So now we've got April through September. Saved me a little time there. September spills out over this cell, so I'm going to make that a little bit larger. I even noticed down here that that money left over needs to be a little bit larger, so I'm going to double click and reformat that size cell. Other things that I need to do at this point, one of your instructions right at the beginning there was to put a spot where you could keep track of what your giving percentage was and your savings percentage. So I'm going to put a giving percentage box down here, and I'm also going to put a saving percentage box. I want them to look a little bit different, so I'm going to do a little formatting. I'm going to put those into orange, and I'm going to make the savings and giving just a little bigger too, and in bold. So change the font size, just looks a little nicer. I think I'm actually going to change the font size for those percentages when I put in. So I've got 12. I also want to make sure that these are percentages, so I've got those two boxes highlighted, and I'm going to come up here and just push percentage, so it's going to change the style to percentage. Notice there's also that shortcut there. I could do Control Shift and then percent. That's actually what I just did. Anyway, so now these are in percentages, and that, just for the sake of this assignment, I'm going to say what if my giving was 10% and my savings was 15%. We'll start there. And kind of the point is I want to be able to play with these percentages and see what it does to the rest of my budget up here. Next thing we need to do is a bunch of addition. This is fairly simple. There's a few ways we could do it. I could do, I need to do equals, and I could just do this cell plus B6 plus B7. That'll give me my total income. The other way I could do it would be to do that sum formula. Not as useful when I only have two boxes, but it's a way to do it. So it equals that sum, and I grab that at the bottom corner, drag it over, and Excel again is smart enough to figure out that, well, if I wanted sum of B6 and B7 there, then I probably wanted sum of C6 and C7 there. I only point that out because that's going to come back to us in just a minute here. I also need to total out my rows, so again I'm going to just use the sum. I've got six cells there to add up. It goes a little quicker if I just do a sum formula. And even though it's not going to save me a ton of time, I can drag again down, and again, here it realized for the total for work that B6 to G6 would be enough, and if I drag that down, it will total up the B7 to G7. And for the averages, well, we realize that the average formula is just average, and again I'm going to choose the data that I want to average, and again I can just grab that corner and drag it down. Now, one thing I'd like you to notice here is that all of this is not in dollars. We see it, maybe didn't notice it immediately, but we can just highlight that whole area and change, because everything in there, oh, actually I need to go even beyond that. So I want to grab actually everything down, even money left over column, row. So I'm going to highlight all of that, and I'm going to just turn that all into currency. We noticed that when it was 33.333333, that wasn't exactly what we wanted it to display. Alright, so my giving. Down here again I've got my giving is going to be 10%. So how do I calculate giving? Well, it equals my income times my giving percentage. Microsoft Excel is smart enough to realize that 10% is the same as 0.1. So for those of you who are thinking mathematically that it should be 240 times 0.1, well, that's what 10% is. Microsoft Excel recognizes that's what 10% is, and so we get $24 just like we should. Now it'd be nice right here if I could just grab this formula and drag it over. But immediately I'm seeing a problem with that. What is that problem? Well, let's see what we've got here. Right here we've got B8, so the cell B8, that's the total income, times the cell B22, which is 10%. Here, it recognized we wanted to go over to C8, but it also thought we wanted to multiply that by C22 down here, which is nothing. I don't really want to drag this over. I could, although it doesn't look as nice. And if I go and change my giving percentage right here, it doesn't change it for all of the months. So that's not really the solution I want. There's a little trick within Excel, and it has to do with the dollar sign, ironically, for this project. We saw when we dragged over this way, it assumed that, well, because we went over one column, we want to move everything over one column. But we don't. We only wanted to move over to C8, but we wanted this to stay at B22. And I don't want to have to go in and change that for every single cell. So what I can do is, in my original formula, I can put a dollar sign right in front of that B. See how I went in there and put a dollar sign right in front of my B22? And what that's going to do is it's going to anchor B when I copy that formula. So let's see what happens now. I drag over, and voila, it works. It kept that at B22. Now it works the same way if we were going up and down. We aren't doing that in this scenario. But if I were to drag down my formula, again, it's going to keep that B, but if you see what it's doing, I went from B8 times B22, and since we went down one, it's thinking, oh, well, maybe we want B9 times B23. Well, that'd be great if that's what I wanted, but if I wanted it to stay B9, it doesn't matter there, times B22, if I wanted to anchor that 22 as well, then I could go in here and put a dollar sign in front of the 22. So that dollar sign really just acts as an anchor and says, when you copy this formula, don't make a change to this. So if a dollar sign is in front of the B, it says don't make a change to that B. If the dollar sign is in front of the 22, it says don't make a change to that 22. when you copy this cell. So anyway, that's one little nuance that we want to deal with, and the savings column then is going to work exactly the same way. It's going to equal our total income times our savings. But again, we do want to go back in there and we want to anchor that. We don't want it, as we drag it across the columns, we don't want to change that B23. We want it to stay in that column B. So we put that $ in there, and then we drag across, and it fills in our savings for us. Now, the nice thing about that is I could go later and play and say, well, what if I decided I wanted to give 20% instead? Well, I enter 20, hit enter, and notice it changes it for all the columns.